The world stood on the edge of change. For centuries, the heirs of Alexander the Great had ruled the East, proud kings behind walls of spears, believing no army could stand against the Macedonian Phalanx. But from the West, Rome was rising, a force of iron discipline and unshakable will, ready to claim the world for itself. And so, in the fog-covered hills of Thessaly, two worlds collided. Trumpets screamed. Tens of thousands of soldiers charged through smoke and dust. Sarissas thrust like lightning. Gladies slashed through armor. Elephants roared, and the sky darkened with the chaos of war. The ground shook beneath the clash of bronze and steel. The past and the future locked in one thunderous storm. When the fog lifted, one truth remained. The age of Alexander had fallen, and the world now marched to the rhythm of Rome. For 200 years after the death of Alexander the Great, his empire's shadow still loomed over the ancient world. Kingdoms born from his conquests fought over the pieces he left behind. Fragments of glory, fragments of power. Among them, one kingdom refused to fade. Macedon, ruled by King Philip V, a proud warrior who dreamed of restoring his ancestors' dominion. But the world he faced was no longer the world of Alexander. To the west, beyond the Adriatic, a new storm was rising. Rome. Rome, the republic that had crushed Carthage and mastered the art of war, was no longer content with its own peninsula. Its legions marched not for plunder, but for destiny. Every victory added another brick to the empire that would one day rule the world. When Philip's armies swept through Greece, burning towns and threatening Roman allies in the Aegean, the Senate's patience snapped. The message from Rome was clear: Macedon will bow or fall. So began the Second Macedonian War, a clash not just of kings, but of ages. The old world of the Phalanx against the new world of the legion. Philip commanded about 25,000 men, veterans of the Phalanx, standing shoulder to shoulder behind an unbroken wall of sarissas, spears longer than a man's fear. On the open plain, nothing could withstand them. When those spears leveled forward, they became a single living creature, slow, unstoppable, merciless. But their strength was also their curse. One break, one stumble, and the wall collapsed. Facing him was Titus Quinctius Flamininus, barely in his 30s, young, brilliant, and hungry for greatness. He led 26,000 soldiers, 2 Roman legions, Italian allies, light infantry, cavalry, and even war elephants that thundered like living fortresses. His weapon was not brute force, it was adaptability. The legion fought in maniples, small units that could twist, pivot, and strike from any angle. Philip fought for honor, Flamininus fought for the future, and both men knew only one would leave Greece standing. By the spring of 197 BC, 2 armies converged on the misty hills of Thessaly. There, under the ghostly ridges called Cynoscephalae, the dogs' heads, the fate of the ancient world would be decided. The spring of 197 BC was cold and wet in Thessaly. Mist rolled down the hills like a living thing, swallowing men and horses in silence. For weeks, the 2 armies had circled each other across the valleys, both searching for an advantage, neither willing to make the first mistake. Philip V of Macedon was tired, but not broken. He had marched his army through narrow passes, chasing rumors of Roman movements. He knew the Phalanx was built for open plains, not for these jagged ridges, but retreat was unthinkable. The Macedonian pride ran too deep. His scouts brought word that the Romans were near, somewhere beyond a chain of low hills called Cynoscephalae. The dogs' heads. In his tent, Philip studied the map under the flicker of an oil lamp. He had 25,000 men, the iron heart of Macedon, heavy infantry in the Phalanx at the center, lighter troops on the flanks, and a small cavalry force to guard his sides. The Phalanx was slow but terrifying. If it could strike first, the Romans would crumble. He needed clear ground and time. Across the valley, Titus Quinctius Flamininus was thinking very differently. He didn't need perfect ground. He needed chaos. Rome's strength was not in the spear, but in control through flexibility. His 26,000 soldiers, legionaries, Italian allies, and war elephants from Africa could adapt to anything. Where Macedon was a wall, Rome was a tide. Flamininus was young but already feared, a commander who understood men as much as terrain. He rode at dawn, his cloak whipping in the wind, studying the fog-covered hills. "Let him come," he said quietly. "Let him come where his spears cannot find me." When Macedonian scouts clashed with Roman patrols in the mist, the silence of the valley shattered. Both kings, miles apart, heard the distant echo of battle. Steel on steel, the cry of horses, the tremor of drums. Neither knew it yet, but the greatest test of their lives had begun. Philip believed his phalanx could crush any army in the world. Flamininus believed the world itself was changing. And between them, in the gray fog of Cynoscephalae, history was waiting to choose a side. Dawn broke over Cynoscephalae in silence. Then a shout, then a horn. And suddenly the hills of Thessaly came alive with thunder. Through the fog, Macedonian scouts stumbled into Roman patrols. What began as a few scattered shouts turned into chaos. Spears flashed, horses reared, and the morning mist filled with the clang of iron. Philip's officers, thinking they had found the Roman vanguard, called for reinforcements. One command followed another, and before anyone realized it, half the Macedonian army was moving uphill into the fog. The phalanx formed, a living wall of bronze and oak. Shields locked, 1,000 sarissas lowered as one. From the ridge, it looked like the forest itself had come to life, advancing slowly, irresistibly. On the other side, Flamininus reacted instantly. He ordered his legions to deploy across the slope, anchoring the line with elephants on the right and light infantry darting through the rocks. Drums beat, boom, 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 as red shields flared through the mist. When the two lines met, it was like the world split open. The Macedonian phalanx crashed into the Roman left, the weight of its charge driving men backward step by step. Sarissas punched through shields, spears shattered, and the screams of dying men drowned beneath the thunder of armor. But the ground was treacherous, uneven, broken, full of gullies. The phalanx began to twist. Gaps appeared in its ranks. Flamininus saw it. He rode through the smoke, shouting orders. "Push the right, wheel the line, break them in the fog." The Roman right wing, supported by elephants, slammed into the unprepared Macedonian left. War elephants tore through men and pikes alike. Horses panicked, ranks collapsed, and the phalanx, mighty and disciplined, began to crumble under its own weight. But Philip refused to retreat. He ordered his right wing forward, down the hill, spears leveled, shouting in unison. For a moment, the old power of Macedon returned. The Roman left was driven back. Men slipped in the mud, falling beneath the forest of spears. It seemed the phalanx might yet hold. Then came the move that changed everything. A Roman tribune, acting without orders, took 20 maniples from the victorious right wing and swung them wide around the ridge. Hidden by the fog, they appeared behind the Macedonian center. When they struck, it was like lightning from a clear sky. The phalanx, unprepared for attack from behind, collapsed in confusion. Spears tangled, shields turned, formation dissolved. Macedonians tried to fight, but their long sarissas were useless in the chaos. Roman short swords, gladii, flashed in the gray light, cutting through armor and flesh alike. The ridge shook with battle cries. "Roma! Roma!" echoed across the valley. Men slipped on blood-soaked ground. Elephants roared. Banners fell. Philip watched from the rear as his proud phalanx disintegrated. His heart broke before his line did. He turned his horse and fled, the symbol of an age fading into the fog from which it had come. And behind him, the legions of Rome advanced like an iron tide, unstoppable, unyielding, and merciless. The mist began to lift, and with it, the illusion of Macedonian power vanished. All along the ridges of Cynoscephalae, the great Phalanx, once the terror of nations, had broken apart. Sarissas lay shattered in the mud. Shields rolled down the slopes like fallen stars. Where order had reigned, now there was only chaos, screams, dust, and the metallic stench of death. Philip V watched from his command ridge, disbelief carved into his face. The formation that had made his ancestors gods among men was crumbling before his eyes. He spurred his horse forward, shouting for his men to rally, but they could not hear him over the thunder of Roman advance. Flamininus saw his chance. He raised his sword high, the morning light flashing from its edge. Forward! No mercy! Break their line! The Roman legions surged like a flood loosed from a dam. Short swords flashed, red shields locked tight, their formation rippling forward with brutal precision. They advanced over corpses, cutting through any who still resisted. Every step crushed centuries of Macedonian pride beneath iron sandals. The Macedonian right, which had once pushed the Romans downhill, was now trapped. The fog that had hidden them became their tomb. From the flank and from behind, maniples poured in, stabbing, hacking, pushing men into the mud. Spears were too long to turn, armor too heavy to run. Some Macedonians dropped their weapons and begged for mercy. Others fought until the ground itself was red. The hill echoed with cries in Greek and Latin, blending into one great roar that rolled across the valley. A Roman tribune tore down the Macedonian banner, the sunburst of Alexander's house, and raised the SPQR eagle high. For the first time, the golden symbol of Rome stood over the warriors of the east. Philip's horse stumbled on the uneven ground. A guard caught his arm and pleaded, "Sire, it's over." He looked once more at the field. Thousands of his men lay still, faces pressed to the mud, sarissas pointing to the sky like grave markers. Philip clenched his jaw. Then, without a word, he turned his horse and rode away. Behind him, the thunder of battle faded, replaced by the chant of victory. Roma! 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 When it was done, the field was quiet again. 8,000 Macedonians lay dead. 5,000 more had surrendered. The Romans had lost barely 700. Flamininus stood among the smoke and ruin. He said nothing. His face was streaked with ash and blood, his armor dented, his sword dull from killing. But in his eyes burned the cold light of realization that this was not just a victory, it was the end of an era. The Phalanx, the weapon of Alexander, was gone, and in its place rose the Roman legion, the army that would shape the world for 1,000 years. The battlefield at Cynoscephalae lay silent beneath the afternoon sun. Smoke drifted through the valleys like ghosts of the fallen. Ravens circled above, their cries mingling with the faint groans of the dying. What had begun as a test of strength ended as a lesson, one written in blood and iron. King Philip V escaped with a handful of cavalry, his dream of restoring Macedon shattered. The Phalanx, the pride of his ancestors, the symbol of Alexander's glory, was no more. He returned north, broken in spirit, forced to beg for peace from the victors he once despised. Flamininus, standing amid the ruins, did not rejoice. He was too intelligent for triumph. He knew that this battle was more than the fall of a king. It was the fall of an age. When the Roman Senate received news of victory, they proclaimed it to the world. Greece is free. And in a way, it was true. No Macedonian garrisons, no foreign kings. But the Greeks soon realized that freedom under Rome came with invisible chains. Roman legions lingered in their cities. Roman envoys decided their disputes. Roman merchants ruled their markets. Still, the world believed it was a new dawn. Rome would not rule with the tyranny of conquest, at least not yet. Instead, it offered order in place of chaos, law in place of pride, and many accepted it, tired of centuries of war between Greek and Greek, king and king. For now, Flamininus was hailed as the liberator of Greece. He rode through the streets of Corinth and Thebes, greeted with laurel wreaths and songs of gratitude. But behind every cheer lingered a whisper that the true conqueror of Greece had come not with chains, but with promises. From that day, the balance of the ancient world shifted forever. Macedon would never rise again, and Rome, no longer a power among many, began its march to become the master of them all. Long after the blood had dried on the hills of Cynoscephalae, the echoes of that day still shaped the world. The smoke may have faded, but the ideas born there, discipline, adaptability, empire, would define the next 1,000 years. The Macedonian phalanx, once the ultimate weapon of Alexander's age, had met its match. Its rigid lines, so perfect on open plains, had crumbled in the face of a new way of war. A war of movement, initiative, and precision. The Roman legion was not just a formation, it was a philosophy. Each soldier was both a fighter and a thinker, trained to act, not just to obey. From that battle onward, every king and general across the ancient world knew the age of Alexander was over. The future belonged to Rome. Philip V ruled on, but as a shadow of the man he once was. Flamininus returned to Rome not as a conqueror, but as a symbol. The man who had proven that discipline and innovation could break even the proudest traditions. He carried no crown, yet in his hands lay the destiny of empires. Within decades, Rome's banners would fly across the Aegean, the Balkans, and Asia Minor. The old kingdoms of Alexander's heirs fell one by one until only Rome remained, cold, unyielding, eternal. And yet the ridge of Cynoscephalae still stands today. Wind sweeps across the same stones where bronze once clashed against iron. There is no sound now, only the whisper of time. But if you listen closely, you might still hear the heartbeat of history, the rhythm of marching feet, the roar of men who refuse to yield, and the silence that follows the birth of an empire.